Hello, and thank you for joining us today. I am Erica Burnett, the Executive Director of the Women's Fund of Greater Chattanooga. At the Women's Fund, we have an ambitious goal to see Tennessee move from 49 to 1 across issues most impacting women and girls. Especially given the challenges of our global pandemic and strained resources, we deeply understand the unique value that collaboration and bold leadership plays in accomplishing these goals. We are proud to continue to leverage collective philanthropic efforts to be able to advocate for equity and justice at the legislative level, and most importantly, we are committed to working hand in hand with thoughtful, strategic organizations like Chattanooga's Women's Leadership Institute. Kim and I are here today, standing on the shoulders of giants, while critically assessing both the roots and the fruit of our community's ecosystem. Just as a healthy, thriving environment relies on optimal functioning of its many parts, Kim and I understand that the actualization of our missions and the success of our bold and timely visions are interdependent upon one another.
You're absolutely right, Erica. And right now, we hope you will indulge us a moment to set the stage for the conversation you're about to hear. Last week, I had the rare opportunity to take my daughter to her volleyball game in my old neighborhood here in Chattanooga. I showed her the path I took to walk to school every day. We drove by my childhood home. I showed her the large magnolia tree we planted in that yard when I was 7 years old. I showed her the front doors that I remember my mother being so proud of the day they were installed. I even showed her the window my older brother used to sneak out of the house in the middle of the night to meet up with the neighborhood boys. I spent 18 years in that house. Its walls hold the memories that built me. Its brick and mortar sustained us through joy and tragedy. The neighbors helped to raise us. And now I'm sharing this important symbol with my daughter. The work that CWLI and the Women's Fund are doing is like that house. We are each cornerstones to an important infrastructure that's being reimagined and rebuilt. The foundation remains, but the architects and the designers are new. Each intentional component is significant. We're equipping women who will carry our daughters into the future. They will be the leaders who make important decisions that build an ecosystem where all women can thrive. We're excited to share this day together. Erica and I understand that where women go next depends on the collective strength of both of our organizations. The Women's Fund needs women who are passionate about advocacy and equipping for building a house strong enough to sustain the winds of change. CWLI stands ready to educate women who want to collaborate and be elevated into all parts of our community to shape the emerging narrative. And someday, with a lot of hard work and a little bit of luck, maybe our daughters will look back and be proud of the house that we all built together. We are so honored that you've carved out some time today to listen to these candidates, one of whom may be the next architect on our journey together. Who we choose as our next mayor is important as women regain some of the momentum lost by COVID-19. So we want you to be as informed as you can when you vote on who that person should be.
That's absolutely right, Kim. And ultimately, our goal was to bring the issues that matter most to our network before these candidates of your choosing in order for us to hear real, thoughtful, and solutions-oriented responses. While especially at the Women's Fund, we believe that every member of our community is an advocate, we also understand that the individuals we select for elected positions are beholden to a certain level of trust and obligation to advocate day in and day out with the best interests of their constituents as a top priority. At this point in the election cycle, many of us have had several opportunities to hear from a number of the candidates, but today we are unapologetically centering the issues and challenges that women across Chattanooga are currently facing. I can't wait to hear what these candidates have to say today, Kim. After the forum, you'll get a chance to learn more about the history and legacy of both the Women's Fund and CWLI through the eyes of two important women who have paved the way for this meaningful work. There will also be information provided on where you can learn more about our organizations and how to join this powerful movement in a way that most resonates with you. We hope this time will not only be informative and educational, but it will also shed light on the various ways in which systems, community, and leadership all play a key role in our everyday lives.
Our moderator for today is Tangela Johnson. Tangela is an organizational development consultant and executive coach. She is affectionately known as the Fixer by her clients. She's the president of North Georgia Corporate Consulting, a professional development boutique. Her firm is dedicated to helping businesses create strong leaders and healthy cultures where integrity, accountability, excellence, and teamwork are the norm. She's a gifted author, consultant, businesswoman, dynamic teacher, keynote speaker, and thought leader in the area of professional growth and development. Her book, Relaxed Power: How to Live a Purposed, Not Perfect Life, explores how living a purposed life allows you to take calculated risks, yielding great results for generations to come. Please join us in welcoming Tangela and our candidates, Wade Hinton, Kim White, Monty Bruell, and Tim Kelly.
Welcome, candidates.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. I am Tangela Johnson, and I will be your moderator today. So, you will be asked a total of 5 questions, all right? 4 of the questions will address topics that concern women in Chattanooga, issues that they're concerned about. But before we get to those important topics, we want our audience to get to know you a little bit better. So we're going to take a trip down memory lane, all right? So this first question will help our audience find out some unique things about you. So here is the very first question. And Wade Hinton, you will be number 1.
All right.
Okay. So the question is, what was your very first paying job? How old were you when you started? And what is one thing that you learned from that job that you will take with you if you become mayor of Chattanooga?
Great. The only correction is when I become mayor of Chattanooga. I would say that. So listen, my first job, I was 11 years old. I was working for my mom, picking up paper. But the first job where I received a true paycheck was with the city of Chattanooga. I was working in a public works summer youth program. And it was fantastic. It was hard. We literally would get out, we'd clear brush, we'd beautify the city, and it was great to work alongside men and women making this city just better. And what I learned from that is every person has a role, everybody is a part of the team to move the city forward. And as mayor, I know that. We are all team members. And the only way we're really going to move the city forward is if everyone contributes and plays their role.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Wade. Tim, your very first job.
My very first job was as a dishwasher and a busboy at the old Vine Street Market, which is on Vine Street. I was 15. I had a hardship license because I was living with my single mom at the time. And she said, you need to get out of here and get a job. And so I went and looked in the newspaper, found it, and it was one of the greatest jobs I've ever had. It was great fun. I worked with a lot of people I know to this day. In fact, Leslie Jordan was a waiter there, and one of the side benefits of that job was he did his variety show to earn his money to go to Hollywood, and I played the drums in that little variety show for him, which was great. I got to see him back in town here the other day, and he was like, oh my God, I can't, he had forgotten who I was long since. So it was a fantastic job. It was really great in that, it showed me the meaning of hard work. And it was really nice because you started with a dirty dish and you ended up with a clean dish. And I don't think I ever had a job that simple again. But it taught me the value of, it taught me that there are no small parts, there are only small actors, the value of teamwork. And it taught me that in my subsequent jobs working for my dad and my family business, I would never ask anybody to do a job I'm not willing to do. There's no such thing as, I'm not a big believer in hierarchy and dictatorial management. I'm a big believer in teamwork, so it really taught me the value of teamwork.
All right, thank you. Thank you. Monty.
Well, my first job was when I was 15, and I worked at a drugstore in right across the street from Dalewood Middle School. It was called Palmer Drugs, and I think I was a clerk there, so you came in, I waited on you at the register. My job was to stock the shelves too, so I was constantly. I just remember all the boxes of Pampers. I didn't know that there were different sizes of diapers, and I learned a lot about Pampers at the age of 15 that I never thought that I would know. I'm an only child. I know that's hard for you to believe. But after I'd been working there about a month, the manager asked me to come to his office, and he said, this isn't really going very well. You're not performing the way we thought you were performing, and that was news to me. I was kind of shocked. I want to say, do you have the right guy? Maybe you've got me confused with somebody. But I learned that it's important to have to meet other people's standards. That it's not just about what I want to do. It's not just about me. It's about what other people's expectations are. And I also learned from waiting on customers that there's a broad variety of people in the world, and I really learned how to interact with different kinds of people. And some of those lessons, obviously, on the campaign trail, are important to me today.
Thank you. And Kim, your first job.
Yeah, thank you. So early on, I babysat. I'm the oldest in my family, so I had a brother 9 years younger. So I babysat for all the neighborhood kids. But my first paying job was in sales at Casual Corner. I had to work to help pay my way through school, so I started early at 16. I really think that that's where I first learned about how important it is to listen to other people and understand needs and understand how different people are. Very different when you're in retail sales. And that's something really I've taken with me my entire life. How do you actually fit needs? How do you actually solve problems? And retail sales is a great way to do that.
Thank you guys for your stories. Now let's shift to those important issues that our audience wants to hear more about. So the COVID-19 pandemic has highlighted systemic flaws that have significantly impacted women, including women in Chattanooga. These questions will address the following issues: early childhood education, safety, affordable housing, and economic mobility. There will be one question per topic, and each of you will have approximately 3 to 4 minutes to answer. So first question will go to Kim. And you'll answer first, and then I will let you know who will follow after that. 2019 data indicated that 50% of Tennessee families depended on a female breadwinner. Since then, we have entered a period of life in a global crisis. The pandemic has placed stress on everyone, but research indicates that women bore the brunt of losing their often low-wage jobs, implementing virtual school, losing access to child care, and often sacrificing career opportunities. How will you not only promote women in the workforce, but also address the inequities that have been exacerbated by the pandemic? Kim.
Yeah, thank you, Tangela. It has been, I think it really has highlighted so many roles that women play. I know that. I'm a female, and I've struggled early in my career juggling a lot of different jobs. I actually qualified for subsidized housing when I was first getting out of school and trying to juggle and try to figure out how to make it. I understand that, especially with childcare, how do you actually make career choices? And the stat was really shocking to me that over 1 million women have dropped out of the workforce, and yet we have a talent gap. So there's some things that we can do here locally. I think that we really could be a poster child of how we actually move our city forward. First is what we do with early childhood education. And when I see women that are dropping out of the workforce because they are juggling so much, what can we do as a city? So we can expand seats. That's one. We can actually work with partners on how we get good quality childcare. Maybe City Hall needs to be a place that we could be an example to other businesses of how we have flexible work schedules and what we can do. If there is a talent gap, and there is, what can we do to actually make it easier for women to actually juggle all of that? In my career, I've been accused of only hiring women. And in order to get great talent, you have to be flexible, and you have to actually work with their schedules. And I think that this has really highlighted the importance of that. And I think me as a female and as mayor, that's one thing that I can really shine a light on, is the importance of employers, giving women more flexibility. If we want to have the best of the best, and we want to actually be a partner, how can we actually come alongside women who are juggling so much to help?
Okay, thank you. Wade.
Yeah, so and the candidates heard me tell the story about the fact that I grew up over in the West Side. My mom raised me, and I only began to appreciate some of the sacrifices that she made in terms of her career by choosing to work right there on the property where we were raised in this apartment complex. And she made that sacrifice because she wanted to have more time with us as kids. And that was a choice made a long time ago, but those same choices, those same decisions have to be made or being made right now. And when you talk about 1 million women leaving the workforce, a lot of folks are choosing, one, because of issues around childcare, but also because they're on the front line, low-wage jobs, right? So we're seeing that mass exodus. So as we think about what's next or how do we begin to address these issues, we've got to be real. This pandemic has taken an issue that, again, these choices were already there, has made it absolutely worse and has exacerbated the challenge. So one, we've got to create more opportunity. What that looks like for us is just first showing up where we are, providing some assistance so that women and their families can stay in homes for rental assistance, making sure we're providing support to small women, minority-owned businesses, making sure we're providing support for childcare during this time. Again, getting us through this pandemic. On the other side of this, looking at how as a city we can, again, model this behavior. Through our Office of Equity and Engagement, we'll make sure that we have inclusive practices within our organizations. That means that we have inclusive leadership. Our managers, our directors, our administrators ought to be having these conversations around what can we do? How can we show up as leaders to address this issue? Without our employees feeling like they're going through this alone. We've got to make sure we're there meeting those needs. Beyond that, I think we've got to not only do this as a city. I'm going to bring the private sector partners and other folks around the table to say, let's move this together. Collectively, we've got to move forward as a community. I think I'm the only person running who's actually began to implement programs and policies that address issues to create gender parity. And so, one, again, we'll have a study that's done to make sure that we're on parity level at the city. We'll also address issues like the Crown Act, right? We want women to show up and be able to have a true sense of belonging and be who they are without apology, right? And so those are the kinds of things that you'll see from the administration. One that, again, addresses the issues that are hitting women hardest right now, but also creating opportunities on the other side to support with resources, tools, and removing those barriers, not just at the city, but calling on partners throughout the city to do the same thing.
Thank you. Tim.
So the COVID pandemic has been brutal across the board, but it's been especially harsh, obviously, to women. And we hear a lot in economics about the K-shaped recovery. It's exacerbated inequity across the board. I come from a matriarchal family. My mom was a single mother from the time I was 11 on, and I saw it then, and it's worse now than it's ever been. I think the most important thing we can do is expanding childcare. Early childhood education is incredibly important. It's the single most important thing I think we can do for the long-term future of Chattanooga. And I was talking to the folks from the Early Matters Coalition the other day. We had 160 child care providers, early childhood providers in Chattanooga prior to the pandemic, and I think they can count about 90 now. They've just blown away. They're just MIA. And I mean, it's a terrible situation. It's put a terrible burden on women in particular, single women in particular, who are also often caring for seniors. So look, I think the city can do primarily much more to expand and through small business support, get those small child care providers back on their feet and direct people in Chattanooga to resources for help. My campaign manager is a woman, and you know there are state resources available for businesses, for people who are in essential businesses and others to help pay for child care. But again, Chattanooga doesn't really have a resource center now to help direct people to resources. I'm not sure how many people know that. So the city can play a much better role in public communications to direct folks to resources, which is currently not the case. Domestic violence is also up during this period of time. I think 28% was the last number I saw. We've got room at the Chattanooga Police Department to expand Victim Services Unit to assist with this, and we should and we will. It's a major issue. We also have to stop evictions. The city could help. We are on the brink of a crisis with evictions, many of whom, many of the renters are single mothers. And we've got to work, again, with the federal government to stop evictions and provide legal support to stop that from happening because, again, the COVID crisis, we're working our way out of it, but we're not there yet. And so we have to be more proactive in that event too. And I would just say my administration would look like the community. My campaign staff now is over half female, and certainly my administration would look like that as well. And I would be aggressively looking for ways to support and expand opportunities for women, and of course would continue with the Mayor's Council for Women as well.
Okay, thank you. Monty.
Well, pre-pandemic, across the United States, women earned 81 cents for every dollar that men earned. And in Chattanooga, when you look at households in poverty, 2/3 of all households in poverty are headed by single women. So women were not in great shape in our economy prior to the pandemic. Those numbers, I'm convinced, are far worse today as we're working our way through COVID-19 and hopefully getting to a point beyond. The first thing that I can do is, as mayor, make sure that I am hiring women and I'm paying them a fair and equitable wage. So when you look at my administration, you will see lots of women. I think like everyone here, our campaign staffs are largely run by women. And I think that my administration would be no different. The city of Chattanooga has about 3,000 employees. What we need to do is make sure that women who work for the city of Chattanooga are being paid a fair wage, that there are no pay disparities within the city of Chattanooga. We absolutely have to do that. One thing that I have learned from being involved in the startup community is that when I look at companies as they begin to grow, the founders tend to hire people like themselves. And so I want to recruit the 100 largest women-owned companies in America to come to Chattanooga, because if we want to accelerate the economic well-being of women, I think if we have female-owned companies here, then they will hire women, they will pay them a fair wage. Can you just imagine if we attracted 3 or 4 $200 million female-owned companies to Chattanooga? It would really have a positive impact on our culture. When I think about women who are hurt the most by the pandemic, there are a few things that we have to do. We absolutely have to improve the availability and quality of child care. People need child care not just Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. People work at night, in the evenings, on weekends. So we need to convene all of the providers of child care services and talk about how we can make it better, how we can find solutions to those issues. In Chattanooga, we do a great job of creating opportunities up at Enterprise South, almost to Ottawa. But that's not where our poverty problem is. We've got to locate jobs in our urban core that are close to where people who need those jobs live. So again, it's about who we recruit and then where we place those companies. The last thing that I will say is transportation is a huge issue. So I want to make CARTA free to ride for all people all the time, and I want to reroute the system so that it actually goes places that people need and want want to go. If you ride the bus every day and we make it free to ride, that's putting between $600 and $1,000 a year per person in your pocket. That would be a big help to someone who's making minimum wage right now. So those are just a few of the things that we need to do, but there's so much that we have to do. But number one, I want to be the mayor who's the champion for single moms, their kids, and their families, because I think we can change the city in dramatic ways if we do that.
Thank you. So I'm guessing that all of you have some type of psychic ability, right? Because apparently you've been thinking about this next question on education, early childhood education specifically, and Monty, you'll be the first one. All right, nearly 2/3 of Chattanooga parents reported problems finding suitable child care. Quality child care is necessary for women to be in and stay in the workforce. How will you work to improve the existing early childhood infrastructure to make it more accessible, equitable, affordable, and sustainable? Monty.
Well, first let me say that I'm a product of Head Start. I learned a lot of valuable lessons in Head Start, and without Head Start, I never would have gone on to Baylor and to become Baylor's first African-American graduate, and I certainly wouldn't have been able to go to Harvard. So I'm a big believer in early childhood education and development. In fact, I've already been in conversation with the J.B. and M.K. Pritzker Foundation in Chicago. The Pritzker family founded Hyatt Hotels, and J.B. Pritzker is the current governor of Illinois. Their foundation is one of the leading funders of innovation in early childhood development. They can't wait to come to Chattanooga and begin to partner with us to establish Chattanooga as a national leader in early childhood development. One of the things that I agree with Andy Burka on is his investment in early childhood education. The problem is it hasn't been big enough. We've got to invest even more to provide more opportunities to families and to our kids. And relative to that, a lot of times you hear people say, oh, the city isn't in the school business. That's the county's problem. Well, as the mayor of Chattanooga, I have a moral responsibility to the children who live in the city of Chattanooga. I refuse to accept that it is the county's job to educate Chattanooga's children. So I'm going to partner with the schools in any way that I can because we can't leave our kids behind. We have a school system where only 36% of the kids are reading at grade level. That is not a recipe for success, but it all begins in those critical years, 0 to 3, early childhood development, and we are going to invest even more when I'm mayor of Chattanooga.
Thank you. Thank you. Kim.
Yes. So I touched on it in the previous conversation, but it is really important that we can do all we can to expand. And there is our Early Matters Coalition already formed that has 40 partners that are working on ways to expand. The mayor's office needs to be an active partner in that. How do we actually encourage? How do we bring in more faith-based community, nonprofits into that arena to look at how we expand early childhood? I think that we need to be an advocate. Again, we need to talk to the businesses in the city and how we can actually get them involved in the process. It's expensive and there's not enough providers. So how do we work collectively in a city to expand those opportunities? So it's vitally important not only for the kids, but it's also for the parents so they can go to work. So it is that talent issue too. If businesses want to create and have a good talent pipeline, one of the ways they can is to do things like offering or being involved in early childhood. So that's going to be a focus of ours. I do think Mayor Burke has done a great job by really initially shining a light on that and having the Office of Early Learning. I think we need to do more. It is more collective. It's not that the city needs to be in that business, but we need to be an active, proactive partner, bringing in the business community because I don't think they've been involved in the conversation enough. We have a lot of nonprofit communities that are there around the table, but I think the business community can make a tremendous impact. And again, I think at City Hall, as a female mayor, I want to give my staff flexibility, and I think we really could be a great example of what a workforce and what we can do to help create a great workforce environment. I've done that in every place I've been, is making sure that there is flexibility, that, and I think we'll be the example.
Thank you. Wade.
So I was in my old community neighborhood about a week or so ago, and I had a chance to share a story with some volunteers. And across the street was the daycare, Newton Center, that I attended when I was 4 or 5 years old. And it was there that I really learned so many valuable lessons and really set me up for success in the path. And you know, when you talk about education, right, for me, I think this is one of those issues that touches everyone, right? It touches the kids. Obviously, we want to make sure we're setting them up for success and get them on the right path. So we have to make sure we're investing. It touches women. We've talked about the number of women that are having to make that hard choice and had to leave the workforce. But it is impacting businesses as well, small business owners. If childcare was not an issue or priority for businesses before, it is now. This pandemic has shown us exactly how it can impact, and this is a worry and concern of a lot of businesses around this community. So we've got to make sure we have them at the table. For us, again, for me, I was fortunate enough to be at the part of the city when we opened the Office of Early Learning and working on projects like Baby University and saw the scholarships that went out. So you'll see from me a commitment to continue to invest and invest more in the Office of Early Learning. That includes providing more access and scholarship to those parents. They make too much to qualify for assistance, but don't make enough to get access to quality child care. To provide some support to those daycares and child care centers that need support for small businesses. For small business support. These are small businesses, and we know that they're actually producing and creating and helping our kids go set up for success, but they're also small business owners. So we have to make sure we're providing that support as well. But more than that, we've got to make sure we have a standard curriculum so that, again, this is a concern I know that Dr. Johnson has. So when those kids do show up in Hamilton County schools, they're ready to go, and they're on that level. Now, again, we're not in school operations, but these are our kids. These are our kids, and I know that my journey from Newton Center to city attorney has been the exception. It needs to be the expectation, whether it's going to go into law, whether you want to go to a trade school, whatever it is, we have to make sure that path is easier, remove those barriers. Part of that is making sure we're investing in our kids, investing in our community, and also partnering with our workers to make sure we're addressing what the needs they have, whether that's through a flexible working environment, whether that's working with businesses to make sure there's on-site childcare. When I was at Volkswagen, one of the things I helped set up was the Erlanger Wellness Center there with an on-site childcare facility. Right, so I'm very familiar with what this looks like and what it can look like. And as the mayor, I will model this and make sure that other CEOs see this is how it's done. So I'm ready, and I'm welcome to partnering with everyone to make sure we become a city that everyone looks to. Monty's right. Pritzker is a foundation that is leading and innovative in this. They're already here doing work. I know Carissa Jones is working on some projects now. We want to expand that partnership and look at more opportunities to support not only our kids, support our women, and support our businesses. And we know by doing that, our community will move forward.
Thank you. Thank you. Tim.
Well, I would echo everything that's been said thus far. Look, this is the single most important long-term issue facing Chattanooga, and we've said it from the very, very beginning, and I'm thrilled that the entire campaign, every candidate in the campaign is now talking about it. All my 30 years in nonprofit work here, and when I went back to graduate school late in life, I had a professor there who drilled into my head. It is the single most important thing we can do for the long-term future of the community. I have no future political motives or ambitions, so I'm willing to pursue strategies and investments that won't necessarily pay off in my term or even my lifetime. And there just is no single more important issue than high-quality, accessible, affordable early childhood education, particularly in low-income areas. Currently, only going into COVID, I think we had 1 in 4 kids in early childhood education, and coming into kindergarten, only I think 40% of kids were actually able to pass a proficiency test, knowing their letters, their numbers, and their colors. And look, we spend all this time when I was working on the Chattanooga 2.0 project trying to figure out how we get kids to 3rd grade reading level by 3rd grade. Well, if they're coming in not knowing letters, numbers, and colors, how's that even possible, right? The best investments in education are the first investments. And so I would aggressively expand what Mayor Burke has already done, creating those 1,000 seats, to really, just by any means necessary, expand that footprint and get it back on its feet. Obviously, most of that is a small business environment. Those providers that we talked about before that clearly need help getting back on their feet. We may be able to look at YFD centers as child care centers. The last thing we want to do is compete with or damage the existing network. But it's just simply the most important thing we can do. Not least of which because, again, it also unlocks the labor force. Women cannot get back to work until they have child care, and it must be high quality child care. So it's the first thing we started talking about. We start campaigning, and I'm glad we're talking about it today because there is quite simply nothing more important. And I don't think we need to, expand the budget to do it. I think, as I've said many, many times, any extra money I find in the budget, in the sofa cushions of the budget, is going to go toward early childhood education, plain and simple.
Thank you. So our next question will be about safety. And Tim, you will go first. All right. Women and their families need to be safe from interpersonal violence of all kinds. Violence against women has escalated since the pandemic. How will you prioritize safety in a way that makes the best use of the organizations and agencies across our city? And how will you allocate resources to prevent the same outcomes from happening again and again?
As I said before, D'Angela, thank you for the question. I think it begins with expanded support for the Victim Services Unit at the Chattanooga Police Department. That is, they're doing great work out there with the Family Justice Center, and that needs to be expanded upon. And we would work with Chief Roddy to do exactly that. I also think, look, the job of the mayor is, in some respects, to be the orchestra conductor, and we have a fantastic nonprofit community here. I'm thinking about the Partnership for Families, Children, and Adults, and others that provide critical services for the city. And in many cases, they've lacked an effective orchestra conductor to help coordinate services. The budgeting process we have now, budgeting for outcomes, forces them to go back through a process to do a lot of hoop jumping to come back and sing for their supper every year for budget. And they're fulfilling essential services for the city that the city would otherwise have to provide in these critical areas. And it's not right, and we need to change that process so that we're on a 3 or a 5 year plan to give them the money they need to operate without having to run around and try to raise money from the private sector to operate, which is time and energy that they can't spend providing services for women in the community. So again, it would be a primary focus in my campaign, and it's a critical area to address.
Thank you. Monty.
Well, our whole community is under a lot of stress that's been created by COVID-19, to be certain. And one of the things that it has highlighted is that we don't have nearly enough mental health services all across the spectrum here in Chattanooga. So as mayor, I want to work with the county, state, and federal governments to find resources to increase our offering of mental health services. Part of that, I believe, is offering couples counseling. I think that so many times people wish they had somewhere to go, wish they had someone to talk to, wish they had someone to help them. And then we don't offer any help, we don't offer resources until it explodes. And then you have the violence. So I want us to get out in front of the problem and make a whole variety of mental health services available to the residents of Chattanooga, regardless of income, regardless of neighborhood, regardless of zip code. That is really what we have to do. The other part of that, and we talk about, there have been several conversations that we've all had about policing and how we want to provide public safety. But I think we should look to cities like Denver, where they have a program called STAR, where they dispatch mental health professionals along with the police to certain kinds of 911 calls. And domestic disturbances would be one of those calls. And I think it's important to have people who can de-escalate those situations instead of escalating them. The correct answer to a couple's fighting is not always an officer with a gun. So I think that those are some of the things that we have to do. And then the last thing I would say is we can't forget about the children, because the children from these situations are under a lot of stress too. And they can't be their best selves. They can't go to school and learn. And so I think we need to partner again with the school system and provide even more mental health and social services through our schools.
Thank you. Kim.
Yes, thank you. So, as Chattanooga's first female mayor, there's no better voice and advocate than I would be for women's issues, and really shining a light that women's voices do matter. We have so many different organizations working in silos and on separate women's issues. And how do we all come around the table? How do we actually support the idea of the Family Justice Center and really make sure it's living up to its full potential? Family issues don't shut down at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and they happen on weekends. So the idea is great, but really centralized services are very limited. So how do we actually pull the resources together? We have some great partners that are in this, but we haven't had it around the table. So it is really working collectively of how we identify what those issues are and really putting that out there and talking about how we're going to solve them. So that's one, is the resources. I've talked since the beginning of the campaign about making sure that our police department is fully funded. And fully funded doesn't mean just police officers that go to the front door. It also means services like the Victim Service Center that actually works on women's issues and domestic violence, making sure there's more resources there. So I think it is shining a light on the problem, making sure people understand women's voices do matter. This is what's occurring in our city. And working collectively like we've done on so many other problems, work collectively on how we solve them, but we don't do it in isolation. I do think that bringing women around the table, and we have goals, we can solve anything. We've done it before. So I look forward to being an advocate and a voice and being out front for women's issues.
Thank you. Wade.
So Sandra, I should have said this at the outset. Thank you for doing this, and thanks to the Women's Fund and CWLI for making this happen. And I start there because I also want to say thank you for the work you've been doing in this area. Right? We know that you have taken policy ideas and to address some of these issues around violence to Nashville and gotten things done. And that, I will tell you as the mayor, I'm going to continue to try to partner with you and support you and have more voices go to Nashville to make sure we have the kind of policies and legislation in place to address a number of these issues. So we know, you mentioned the stat in terms of the increase during this pandemic, but again, this is something that was already an issue prior to. And just know that I'm going to be lifting up this issue. I'm going to be a champion and an advocate to make sure this is something that we have to make sure we're providing the resources and support that addresses not only in a reactive aspect, but a proactive perspective as well. That means, as Tim said, victim services as well, making sure we're providing support to those nonprofits that are helping women get out of situations, but also making sure we're doing work and investment on our front end. That means providing mental health services. That means making sure that we're telling kids early, this is not how couples and relationships work. Right, and we're doing that in a way by using our YFD centers, our community centers to talk about those issues. We're doing that in a way that's partnering with Hamilton County Schools to go in and talk about these issues as well and lift them up. So again, if they see something, they can say something. And that's the other piece of this, right? We've got to have a place, if you are in a situation that is violent, here's a place that you can go. Here's where you can call, and here's the support you're going to receive. It needs to be as simple as that. And as mayor, we're going to streamline it. We're going to make it efficient, effective, and impactful, and again, provide the services not before things happen, but also on the back end as well. And for those organizations that are doing this work, know you're going to have a mayor that's also going to be a partner to you. I was there when we started the Family Justice Center. Know we'll do more of that. We have to figure out how we get even better access, though, to the Family Justice Center and get some of those things, those resources out into some of our community centers as well. It's a great hub, but it needs to touch more communities to ensure that for those who might not have access, that we do make it a little bit more equitable in terms of our delivery. So I'm looking forward to doing that, and again, I'm looking forward to partnering with you and a number of other organizations that are lifting up this important issue.
Thank you. Thank you. So here's our last question. And Wade, you will go first. Okay. All right. And this is on affordable housing. Affordable housing and availability of housing is a pressing need in Chattanooga. But housing is more than just units. It is also about healthy and thriving neighborhoods that are safe, walkable, and have access to quality food sources. What are your priorities for neighborhood development to meet the housing needs of all Chattanoogans, especially women who are serving as head of household?
Great. So I was very fortunate. Again, had a mom and right there in the Ridgeway, and it was a neighborhood that absolutely believed in me, invested in me. I felt this was family, like it was family. I remember being able to walk to what was the red food store, the only to be changed to buy low, right? We could literally walk there. It was not even a mile for us to go and have access to food. I remember we had, there were fields there we can go play. We had a rec center, all of those things. But it was still something missing, right? You didn't have single family homes anywhere there, right? So in terms of showing a path of how you build wealth, all of these other things, it wasn't complete as a neighborhood. And so there was work to be done. And so for me, it's thinking about those lessons and applying them across the city to understand what's really needed. Number one, we need a true strategy. We have neighborhoods being developed, we have things happening, but there's no true strategy. So first thing we want to make sure we do is have a housing strategy. That's working with CNE, working with CHA, and working with our partners across the city to understand what's our affordable housing strategy and begin to understand how we implement things, where we invest, how we invest, and when. Beyond that, we want to make sure we're setting some audacious goals around the number of units that we want to create. We've set 2,000. And we want to have a number that's out there so people know this is a priority for us. More than that, we want to have that information out front so people can see how we're doing in terms of our affordable housing, right? We want to have a tracker that people will be able to see. The other aspect of this is when we look at our neighborhoods, we want to look at those amenities. I mentioned earlier being able to walk to the red food store and to buy low. There are places now that you have to go miles and miles before you're able to get access to food, and that's just not okay, right? There are places you have to go miles and miles before you get to a park for healthy living, and that's just not okay. It's not okay that Lookout Mountain is number one when it comes to health disparities in this state, but the Alton Park is basically second to last, right? So we have some challenges that we have to address. So again, it's not okay. The other aspect of this is, again, looking at the infrastructure and ensuring that when you do go to your neighborhoods, that you have this sense of pride that these potholes and the lack of sidewalks and the lack of art and all of those things that are important to invest in these neighborhoods, that you see them, that you feel that. And again, for me, growing up in a place where, again, it literally felt like it was designed to be forgotten, I want every neighborhood to know that you are not forgotten, that we believe in you, that we're investing in you, and we're coming, and we're gonna need your support. We have very unique neighborhoods, and we wanna make sure we're protecting the character of each one of them. That means that as developers want to come in and offer someone that $40,000 for their home, knowing that they're going to flip it for $120,000, that they know that this is what's happening, right? And we're putting in the tools, the resources, and the policies to not only protect them, but again, protecting the character of our neighborhoods. And that also means providing the support for those homes that may be in dilapidated conditions, to work with our nonprofit partners, to come in and restore those places so that people can feel a sense of being in a quality home with access and the amenities they need, again, to feel pride in their neighborhood, but if they do that, they also feel pride in their city.
Thank you. Tim.
Right. So, look, affordable housing is a huge issue in Chattanooga, and it's going to get worse before it gets better. That's not good news. We can't simply rely on the market to fix this problem by attracting investment. We've seen what happens when you leave it to that, right? We get speculative investment with housing that's looking for tax breaks, with housing that isn't affordable. So really, this is a leadership issue and a management issue. The city's got to take a much more aggressive and proactive approach to directing investment to dramatically expand the supply of affordable housing. We start by unlocking the land bank. There are 1,000 cities, something like 4,000 acres that the city owns that's sitting there dormant. That needs to be freed up for investment and creation of affordable housing. We can work with our local foundations. We're blessed to have fantastic, large, well-endowed local foundations. There are many strategies that other cities are using around impact investment to create not just grant money funded strategies, but creating capital strategies where those endowment dollars can be invested in asset-backed real estate strategies to create affordable housing. None of that's happening now. It would happen under my administration. And we would start day one because we are already behind the 8 ball here. And again, the problem is very real, and I'm afraid post-COVID it's going to get worse. Regarding neighborhood development, I say all the time, great cities are composed of great neighborhoods. And we need to put more focus and resources back on neighborhoods and the building blocks that create great neighborhoods. We've got food deserts. There's no longer a grocery store on 3rd Street. There's no longer a grocery store on Brainerd Road. And those are 2 of our great old neighborhoods that are now handicapped. And so we've got to take a more proactive approach. I would split, currently you've got economic and community development together at the city. I would split that and put different heads on economic development, which is its own animal, and community development, and this would fall under community development. And this person's really sole job would be to be looking at expanding affordable housing and how we breathe life back into these neighborhoods. One way to do that is focusing on green spaces, right? I would organize parks a little different and go back to parks and outdoors and work with Matt Lyle and other innovators in Chattanooga to push forward on some of these projects to create greenways, to connect neighborhoods so single mothers could get out and walk to a park with their children and enjoy the great asset that is Chattanooga's green spaces. It's probably our greatest natural competitive advantage as a city is this incredible natural environment that we have, but we haven't been proactive enough in creating and connecting those spaces and neighborhoods. So that would be my approach.
Thank you. Monty.
Well, I am encouraged somewhat because CNE has recently released a multi-year strategy and plan to address housing affordability in Chattanooga. The one thing that I really like about the approach CNE is proposing is that we do it on a neighborhood by neighborhood basis. That is so that we can maintain the character and culture and history of each neighborhood. One of the problems that we have is in government, there's been a tendency to give every place an equal amount. So we pass out $10 here, $10 here, but everybody's got a $100 problem. And we won't be able to really address this until we change our way of thinking and we look at a neighborhood and we provide all of the resources that are needed to fix that neighborhood. And then we move to the next neighborhood and we provide all of the resources to fix that neighborhood. It's a totally different approach, but it's how we're going to be successful. I would say the same thing about our school system. We focus on the system when we should be focusing on individual schools. And I guess that's just a problem that government in general has, and that's a perspective that in my administration we're just going to have to change. Specifically about housing affordability, the upper limit of affordability in Chattanooga right now is about $189,000 for a house, just under $200,000. But last year, the average home that was built in Chattanooga was $350,000. So there's a huge gap there. We are not building affordable housing. I think part of the reason that we're not building affordable housing is that we have a regional planning commission that has too many developers on it. We certainly need developers there, and I am in favor of development, but we've got a situation right now where the foxes are guarding the hen houses, and I think that we've got to get away from that. We've got to put some everyday Chattanoogans on the Regional Planning Commission, and I think we'll get a better result. The last thing I will say about affordability, I studied economics in college, and the most efficient way to make any good or service more affordable is to increase the amount of money that people have to pay for that. So when we pay people livable wages, we will address the affordable housing problem as a benefit of that. So, as mayor, I'm going to take a different approach. It's not going to be business as usual. We didn't just have a housing affordability problem this year. We had one last year. We had one the year before that. What we had was a lack of leadership and a lack of innovation and a lack of willingness to try new things. That will not happen in my administration. We will be trying new things every day because we need to find solutions that work.
Thank you. Kim?
Yeah, well, thank you. One of the reasons I am running for mayor is that I've seen the success, and I have been successful at what we've done, creating a great downtown. And I've seen so many areas of our city that have been left out. And I want to take the same processes and skill set that we've used to create a great downtown, which is still important, and really apply that to every part of our neighborhood. So I've been out meeting with neighborhoods, talking to the neighborhood associations since I started my campaign. And every one of our strategies really addresses components of how we build strong neighborhoods. So the first piece is community planning. So my administration, and I think any strong city, is community up. It's not top down. It's actually getting out and understanding what makes each area unique. Some neighborhoods need more parks, some more sidewalks, some more housing, but there's components that every neighborhood needs more of. So the first thing is the affordable housing piece. We've put together a very specific program of how we believe we can bring 700 units of affordable housing, and that's a goal that is attainable by really leveraging city assets. There's over 500 parcels of city-owned property throughout neighborhoods, and instead of getting those the back tax properties unlocked and then selling them on the courthouse steps, we need to work with partners like Chattanooga Neighborhood Enterprise and the neighborhood associations to really develop different types of housing that fit within that neighborhood and price ranges that fit within that neighborhood. So that's one piece. We really do believe that by putting some funds in, we plan to put $2 million into the budget, and then work with area banks and nonprofits to really have a housing fund that is sustainable. So we really believe that we can do affordable housing in a great way. We've looked at areas like Knoxville. They've done some things like recoding, looking at neighborhood codes about what housing types are available. So I think that the city has several different levers that they can do to help solve affordable housing, but really working with partners like Chattanooga Neighborhood Enterprise is a key. And yes, they've done a great plan, and I think it's really bringing them back to the table to identify that. We have a great Parks and Recs strategy also. We don't have a Parks department. We want to have a Parks Foundation that neighborhoods really can take more ownership of the green space inside their neighborhood and make sure it's programmed correctly. Neighborhoods need to be safe, and that comes from actually making sure that we have police officers and first responders that look like that neighborhood and part of that community. So there's several components to great neighborhoods. When you have all that, you get investment. So the idea of a grocery store coming to a disparate part of town is not going to happen. You've got to see investment, and that really is the city leveraging a lot of the opportunity with property we own, with activity that's going on to attract some developers to bring some services. So there's lots of levers, and it's working all together, but I think what's happened to this point is everyone's been working in a silo. We need to come around the table and help create some great, strong neighborhoods that look like authentic neighborhoods in our city.
Wow. You guys are pretty amazing. This has been an absolute joy to spend time with you. I am sure our audience appreciates your energy and your passion around making Chattanooga the absolute best it can be. So good luck to all of you. I want to thank our audience for joining us, and we really appreciate CWLI and the Women's Fund for making this possible. We appreciate the production team and everyone who was involved in this process. And we look forward to seeing great things from one of you and all of you in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Tangela. Appreciate the opportunity.
It's been great.
Hello, I'm Edna Varner, and I am thrilled to share some of the history of the Women's Fund of Greater Chattanooga and how our work has become increasingly critical over the years. Very early in our founding, I found myself in a room full of passionate women as part of the Women's Fund Network's annual conference. A handful of us traveled from Chattanooga to Atlanta to participate in this national gathering. The shared sentiment at the conference was how hard life continues to be for women when it shouldn't be. This deeply resonated with me, and I was reminded of my mother. And although she was not a single mother, I saw her being so strong in so many ways, and she had to do it on her own. And I thought, what if women didn't have to do it alone? What if these women, like my mother, had other women sharing their stories and bolstering each other through? It was the collective lived experiences of all those women in that room and their resilience and ability to overcome so many challenges while realizing the daunting challenges ahead. How much it would mean to each of them, to each of us, to face these challenges together instead of alone. It was in that room and the subsequent work of the Women's Fund which affirmed our commitment to be working together to lighten the individual burden. We've experienced a tremendous level of success since those early days, from championing statewide anti-human trafficking campaigns to big legislative wins. I'm proud to continue to see our vision in action. When I consider the legacy of the Women's Fund, at some point I want us to look back at what we've accomplished and barely remember how hard it was. I envision a day when it's difficult to remember a time when women were paid less than their male counterparts, when women were victims in their own homes, or a time women didn't even apply for some of the jobs or aspire to some of the things they desire for themselves. Part of this legacy will be our commitment to continuing to surface new challenges that have gone unnoticed or unaddressed. That anything that is still making life hard for women is still being addressed. When people think of the Women's Fund, they acknowledge that we have accomplished so much, but instead of resting on their laurels, they continue to address new challenges and champion worthy causes. My most important hope for the future of women and girls across our community and across our state is that the usual suspects who are always on the front line advocating for women will be joined by new faces, especially younger faces. That the usual folks who are ready to take the risk and be bold are joined by women who never considered themselves bold, but have now been emboldened. I hope that we all see ourselves important to this fight. I'm an educator, and I grew up in Chattanooga when our schools were segregated. Over the years, I've been one of the leaders of numerous collective intervention efforts, some more successful than others. And what has become clear is that there is a role for each group, each organization. When our community is hemorrhaging in many ways, here at the Women's Fund, our collective philanthropy helps to stop the hemorrhaging, mitigating the damage that has already been done. But our advocacy efforts address the root causes of these issues, so we aren't fighting the same battles year after year after year. Most importantly, we aren't fighting alone.
Hello, my name is Marge Fleming, and I'd like to take a moment to share with you some of the history of the Chattanooga Women's Leadership Institute, or as it's known, CWLI, and why I think it matters as much today as it did when I helped start it 25 years ago. In 1996, myself and 6 other female leaders looked around and said to ourselves, there really should be more of us. We thought we had the ability to multiply and see more women in decision-making roles. Passion, purpose, and purse became our tools. We believed that we could start something that got women thinking about taking on leadership roles. The first couple of events proved to us that was true. Mentoring was not a word often used at that time, or even generally thought about, and yet that was exactly what we were doing. Then we began to see more and more women join us. When I think about the legacy of CWLI going forward, I think we have successfully introduced hundreds, if not thousands, of women to even the potential of thinking of themselves as a leader. CWLI has also demonstrated to the community that women's voices matter, and we have to be present in decision-making roles. We've worked hard to instill confidence in so many women, and I would like to see us keep that going and build on it. We also believed that the more we could get women saying good things about one another and supporting one another, we would consider that a home run. Those of us who started this organization would like to see this work accelerated and see women being advocates for one another in our community. We all end up being better when that happens. My great hope for this organization and for the future of women is the same today as it was then. When we can achieve being authentic leaders, we can do all the things that we strive for as women. It is important that women step up to being ourselves. We want to see women rewarded for their leadership based on the things that are glowing inside of them and starting to come out. We must turn down the noise that keeps us from getting there. And we think about what's next for women. We look around, we recognize that there are still great opportunities. We have all the tools we need to achieve great outcomes. In short, we didn't get there alone. Starting with just a few of us who had a dream, we created a movement that has now become an institute. We have proven that when we work together and with our community, we realize our mission of increasing the leadership capabilities and influence of women. It is our great hope that you understand you are not alone either. Those of us who paved this path before you are still here cheering you on and excited to see just what you'll accomplish. Thank you.